So before you go through and do the practice problems, so you'll notice after the video there's some problems for you to work on and go through. I just want to do a quick reminder of what each the properties are for polynomials. Okay, so remember, going through our sets, exponents kind of function in a different, sort of under different rules than maybe our coefficients or our regular numbers have in the past. So our rules say we can add and subtract with exponents as long as the variable and the exponent match. So here, let me zoom in a little bit here. Okay, the variable and the exponent have to match. So if I have something like 4x squared plus 6x squared, I can add these because they have the same variable and they have the same exponent. Okay, and then the rule says once we add them, we are going to add the coefficient, the number in front, just like normal. So 4 plus 6 equals 10. And then the exponent is going to stay the same. So if it was a 2 and we're adding it to a 2, we're keeping an answer with an exponent of 2. Okay, so when we're adding and subtracting, our exponent stays the same. Okay, we can multiply with exponents. Okay, and if we want to multiply with exponents, then our base needs to match. So we need to have the same thing that's receiving the exponent. So if we have something like x to the third times x to the fifth, we would say that these both have the same base because it's an x that's receiving the exponent both times. And we will then add the exponents. So we will get x to the eighth. So when we multiply, we are going to add the exponents. Now, we can only add exponents when the bases match. So if we have different things happening, like 3x to the second, y to the fourth, times 2xy squared times 5y. Okay, it doesn't matter that there's different things in different places. What's important is that the things that are alike are going together. So we have coefficients in multiple places. So because those are coefficients, those are going to function under our normal rules, and we will just multiply 3 times 2 times 5. So you can do it all in a calculator, whatever, individual pieces. When we multiply 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, then we will move on to the next like thing. So we have x's that are alike. Okay, when we don't see an exponent at all, we need to remember that that's a 1. Okay, and when we multiply, we add. So 2 plus 1 is going to give us x to the third. And then we have y's. Oh, we have one over here too. This also has a 1 on it because there's nothing. Okay, so we can add those. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. And so we will get an answer of 30, x to the third, y to the seventh. Okay, we can deal with exponents when we have two exponents happening at the same time. So when we have a power to a power or an exponent to an exponent. So if I have something like y to the fifth, all to the third, right? I have two exponents happening here at the same time. When we have an exponent to an exponent, we want to multiply these two things. So 5 times 3 gives us 15. So when we have an exponent to an exponent, we are going to multiply the exponents. Now, there might be different things inside receiving that exponent. So if we have something like x to the third over y to the fifth, all squared, then we would have to multiply in both of these situations. So we'd have x to the sixth over y to the 10th. Now, the piece that we have to be really careful of is if there is a coefficient. If there is a value in front of that variable, okay, we are still going to multiply that 3 and 5, But this isn't an exponent. This 4 isn't an exponent, so we don't multiply those. We need to take 4 to the third power. And exponents can get big kind of quickly. So if you're not for sure how to put that in your calculator, you're going to press 4 like normal, and then this up caret button, which is right above your x squared, and then type in the value of the exponent. That gives us 64. And then we'll multiply those, which gives us 64y to the 15th. Okay, if we have a negative exponent, a negative exponent is telling us that something is in the incorrect location. So if I have something like x to the negative 4 that says I don't want to be situated where I am. And remember, everything really has a fraction going on. We just might not see that denominator of 1. Okay, so if we have that negative, it's telling us it doesn't want to be there, and we need to move it to the other side of the fraction. So we're moving it from the top to the bottom. And when we move it to the bottom, we're taking that negative off because that's the location it needs to be in. Now, we can't leave a top empty, so we need to fill that in with a 1. Okay, so a negative exponent is telling us to move it to the other side. Now, it doesn't mean that we're always moving to the bottom. If something is in the bottom, we might also be moving it to the top. So if I have something like 1 over 4y to the negative 2. Okay, this y has an exponent of negative 2. Now we have to be really careful because we can only move what's receiving the negative exponent. Okay, so that y has the negative exponent, not the 4. So the 4 is staying put, and that y is coming up to the top. So we'll get y squared over 4. Okay, we can divide with exponents. So we have something like x to the 7th over x squared. Division is telling us that we are going to subtract these exponents. So 7 minus 2 gives us 5. So when we are dividing, we are going to subtract exponents. Again, the bigger issue with this is when there's coefficients in front. So if we have something like 12x to the 3rd over 8x to the 7th, the 12 and the 8 we do not want to subtract. The 12 and the 8 are just like normal, right? If all you saw was 12 over 8 in a problem, we would divide this or reduce it. So if you're not sure how to do that by hand in your calculator, you can do 12 ABC 8 or 12 divided by 8. The key is that we want it in its improper fraction form. So we're going to change this from a mixed number to improper by doing second ABC. Now, if you had a decimal, so if you did 12 divided by 8 and you had a decimal, you would have to do the second PRB first and go from a fraction to a decimal, and then from the mixed to improper. Okay, so we have 3 over 2. Then we'll subtract, so 3 minus 7. Again, if you're not for sure, guys, check in your calculator. It gives us negative 4. Okay, we cannot have a negative exponent in our final answer. So that negative is telling us a location. So if we subtract and we get a negative, that's telling us that we need to write it on the denominator. So I'm going to move this to the bottom of my fraction. I should only have one x left. I don't ever want to have an x in the top and the bottom. So don't write that x in both locations. You're trying to get it all combined into one location. Our last property tells us that if we have a 0 exponent, it just says that anything to the 0 power is 1. So x to the 0 power is 1, 4 to the 0 power is 1. Now if we have something a little bit more complicated, okay, we're making sure that the only thing that equals 1 is what's receiving the exponent. So here the 4x is getting the exponent of 0, so that becomes 1. that 5 stays put. Okay, so try and take this information from this quick video with these properties and apply it to the worksheet that you need to do next. And then once you complete that worksheet, there'll be a video you can go through and sort of check your answers and make sure you're on the right track.